Well, let's go ahead and get started. So, Commissioners, today is the first of the two hearings on the 2016 State Transportation Improvement Program. As everyone knows, the STIP is a 5-year program of capital improvements that is adopted biannually in even-numbered years. State law requires the Commission to hold at least two hearings, one in the north and one in the south, before adopting each new STIP. Today is the Southern California STIP hearing. Next week, on the 24th of March, we will be holding the Northern California STIP hearing in Sacramento. The purpose of the hearings, as specified in the government code, is to reconcile any objections by any county or regional agency to the Caltrans program or Caltrans objections to any regional program. The hearings also provide an opportunity for each regional agency and Caltrans to explain its proposals and why the Commission should include them in the program. Each Commissioner should have a copy of the hearing briefing book prepared by staff. It's this red document because we're in the red. And I didn't come up with that joke. That's Ms. Ms. Fabula. She came up with that appropriate color for the book. This is not a staff recommendation. It's very important that we make that distinction of any kind. It is simply the staff's compilation of the Regional Transportation Improvement Programs and the Inter-Regional Transportation Improvement Program presented in a single format. Putting together something of this magnitude, which is prepared in a relatively short time frame, is bound to include some errors and perhaps even some misinterpretations. This work remains subject to updating and correction before preparation of the STIP staff recommendations, which will be in April, and anyone concerned is invited to bring us changes and corrections. And obviously, we will hear from you in this setting. Under the law, the Commission may include a project in the State Transportation Improvement Program only if it has been nominated by a regional agency in its RTIP or by Caltrans in the ITIP. The STIP is constrained by the levels of funding identified in the amended fund estimate adopted by the Commission on January 21st of 2016, hence the problems we have with the deprogramming issue. The fund estimate starts with the revenue assumptions and the assumption that nearly $4 billion in projects from the last STIP will be carried forward to arrive at the capacity to add new projects to the 2016 STIP. This estimate identifies a much lower level of STIP funding than was identified in the 2016 fund estimate approved in August of last year. The estimate of capacity has changed from having $46 million available, which is essentially zero when you consider the needs in this state, to a negative $754 million. This means that projects must be deleted from the STIP and remaining projects must be delayed, that is, spread over the 5-year period. At the front of the hearing book is the summary that compares the RTIPs and the ITIP proposals against the program capacity levels identified in the fund estimate. We no longer break down the capacity by fund type. However, we do still show rail and transit projects and bicycle and pedestrian projects separately from highway and road projects for each county and the department. The programming challenge in the 2016 STIP is the lack of sufficient transportation revenues, leading to a negative target of $754 million and deletions of already programmed projects. Remaining program must be respread out over the 5-year period. That is, $755 million must also be delayed to the last 2 years. Those numbers are very close, by the way, but they are two distinct numbers. Proposals received total $515 million in overall deletions, with some new projects and cost increases included. Proposed programming in the last 2 years totals about $350 million. The first 3 years of the STIP period remains more than $643 million over-programmed. So that is a problem we will have to address. There are two significant programming challenges in the 2016 STIP. First is that the $754 million in projects that we referred to earlier must be deleted. The second is that second number, the $755 million of the remaining programming in the first 3 years must be delayed to the last 2 years of the STIP. After the STIP hearing, staff will begin preparing a comprehensive recommendation for adoption of the 2016 program. The STIP adoption is scheduled for May 18th and 19th of 2016, and as again required by law, staff recommendations will be published no later than April 22nd, which is 20 days in advance of the STIP adoption. Staff's recommendations will be based on the proposals in the RTIPs and the ITIP, the capacity identified by the fund estimate, the policies in the STIP guidelines, and any further information or guidance that we may receive during and following these hearings. We will continue working with Caltrans and the regions to address any questions or unresolved issues as we develop our staff recommendations and to make sure we understand regional and interregional priorities, and that no one is surprised by what we recommend or why. After this introduction, we'll move into the interregional and regional presentations. Caltrans will make a presentation of its ITIP, and each regional agency will have the opportunity to make a presentation regarding its regional transportation improvement program and to comment on the ITIP. Before Caltrans and each of the regions testify, staff will give a brief overview of the issues specific to that proposal. Members of the public wishing to comment should fill out a speaker's card and give them to Mrs. Johnson over here, and can comment following the Caltrans or regional presentation or at the end of the hearing. Let me deviate from the prepared remarks here just to say two things. Number one, staff really appreciates the efforts on the part of many of the regional agencies to participate in determining which projects should be deprogrammed or delayed. And I think that's been very helpful to us, and as I indicated in my remarks, there were a large number of projects that the regions submitted for either delay or deferral from the program. The second thing is, I want to compliment the regions on your assistance in alerting members of the legislature, your delegations, of the problems that this program faces. And we had a packet up here at the commission meeting earlier today where we had all of the letters that you had sent on. We requested that that kind of communication occur, and we just want to commend the regions for following through on that and communicating the dire need of this program with your representatives. So with that, let me turn it over to Laurel Jansen, who will take us through the remainder of the program.
Sure. Okay, so if there aren't any questions at this point, I can begin.
Or perhaps we should maybe, do the commissioners want to make any comments?
The only thing I just is to say thank you for acknowledging the good work you guys are doing out there, reaching out to your legislators. It's going to require a continuous effort to continue to reach out. So one letter is outstanding. I would love to see copies of those letters every commission hearing come in that you've continued to reiterate. So thank you very much for taking on that call to arms.
Laurel?
Okay. So I'll begin by giving a brief overview of the ITIP, and then Bruce will present the ITIP. So Caltrans is proposing to delete a net total of $192.4 million in programming. They're closing out some projects that were funded for pre-construction and also deleting some pre-construction only projects. They are also proposing changes to their rail and transit programming by combining some projects overall into one project, the capitalized maintenance, and they're deleting one siding upgrade and using those funds to increase another siding upgrade project. So they have several changes in both the highway and the rail and transit. So I'll leave it over to Bruce.
Okay, thank you, Laurel. Bruce DeTerra with Caltrans. Before I begin, Gino. There we go. Well, before I begin, it obviously brings me no pleasure, and I know it brings our regional agencies no pleasure to be here today, but for the interregional program, this has been a decades-long effort to upgrade the connectivity between the state's major regions along corridors that you could view as the economic arteries of the state, of connecting the different organs or regions of the state. So in what we're proposing, we really are interrupting, or perhaps in some cases halting for a long period of time, the upgrade of these facilities, and leaving very clear bottlenecks and problems with the system in terms of responding to the demands of there. So I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail on any particular projects, but just to give the overview that we also, as your agencies have had a very difficult time in deciding how to proceed with this. So as a reminder, there may be some redundancy in your knowledge already with what I'm going to speak to, but I won't assume everybody fully understands either the ITIP program or the fiscal situation that we're in and how the money flows are affecting our decisions. So the Interregional Transportation Strategic Plan program is limited to projects on the state highway system or the intercity passenger rail system. And those are state-funded intercity passenger rail services, such as the Surfliner, the San Joaquins, and the Capital Corridors. It does not include routes such as the Sunset Limited and those. And it's to those projects that are for interregional movement of people, vehicles, and goods. And that is from statute. That's not us being antiquated by referencing the increased vehicles. So statewide, the ITIP is 25% of the entire STIP, and it's redundant here as to how much we're doing and why. So I'm going to walk you through the funding chart to show how this goes from fiscal year through the 5-year program. If you'll recall, this was shown at the last STIP hearing that we had. There's a little green bar at the end representing new money. So the blue bar represents the programming that we already have within the current STIP. So the blue, that's the amount that we have programmed, and the orange bar is how much revenue we actually have in this fiscal year. So the difference between the blue bar and the red bar gets represented by the yellow bar, and it carries forward to the next fiscal year. So then you can see the amount of new fiscal capacity we have the next year, and there's the amount that's currently programmed. This is for the entire STIP. This is not just the ITIP. That's already programmed in projects for the 16-17 years. So you can see a problem here. And you can see this problem grows dramatically. So there's the next year of programming to the point that it appears to be ridiculous and has no apparent end to this. So you can see that this funding is not significantly increasing, but the liability is increasing dramatically. So here we have no new programming in the last 2 years of the STIP that we have where we're in the past we would have been adding projects. In the past these would have been green bars where we're bringing in new projects, but instead we've got liability carrying over from previous years. So it's an enormous amount represented by that. So that is the last year of the new STIP that's going to get adopted and how much over we are from the available money. So that represents $754 million in projects that have no funding, that we don't have fiscal capacity to carry forward. Therefore, they have to be dropped from the program. So for the state's portion of this, our original proposal assumed $600 million over the 5 years. We have 408 under the current projection, which represents a 32% reduction with our $192 million. Now we get to the 192 rather than the clean 25 because we can't get rid of parts of projects. We have to delete the entire project or delay the project beyond the 5 years. And though I'm using the term delete, it is our hope and expectation that when the funding crisis is resolved for the STIP program, that these projects would be prioritized to come back into the program so that we can continue these. But there is no guarantee of that, and we don't know what policies may be in effect at the time that that money comes back. If it does come back, what additional requirements will be placed upon it. So for our approach, we deleted all the pre-construction projects, and at the end of that, we still didn't have enough, and so we had to also delete construction projects as well, projects that are ready for construction, but we just can't go forward. And this is the list of projects that we're recommending for deletion. You will notice on the far right corner, under the RIP, the regional funds, there are quite a lot of dollars on there as well, $93 million. When you combine the $93 million plus the $192 million from the state portion of the STIP, that represents 38% of the entire STIP program is tied up within the interregional program. And so the reduction we're proposing reduces the STIP liability by 38%, not just our 25% share. But this is the situation we find ourselves in. A number of the regional agencies that have RIP money, they would rather not lose their project, but since we can't go forward with it, absent our funding, they essentially become infeasible to do within a reasonable planning horizon, and therefore it's necessary for them to take parallel actions to delete their revenue as well. Again, with the hope and the expectation that these projects may well come back in. Some of the projects we selected that we're getting ready for funding, or we're getting very close, we expect that they'll be very competitive in the new fast lane freight and highway program. perhaps not this first year cycle because they haven't really had a lot of time to get ready, but since we have 5 years of this cycle, we expect that they will be very competitive. They're very well advanced in delivery and may well be ready for the 18-month construction window by the time we're done. That concludes. Oops. Okay, I thought that would turn off. That concludes my remarks. I'm happy to take any questions commissioners may have.
Commissioners?
Bruce, I think we've had this conversation before, but I think the visual is a little misleading in the fact that while we don't have any blue bars on 1920 and 2021, we don't live in a world when we wouldn't have to have some kind of investment. So I don't know if you could make it a dotted, but one could easily argue, as you are, that we can't even catch up with the first 4 years. But in reality, if we take a total timeout, the picture's even worse because you historically would be doing something every year and making some progress. So I don't know if you could make that a purple line or something, that if you could do an average of what we historically have done over 10 years or something. I think it's even worse than your graph shows.
Right. And these graphs account for no project cost increases due to the kinds of things you run into the project or the cost increases that will come with delays. So as these projects are moving out, we are not accounting for delay costs. So if you say, if you account in, we are at Mark.
If I can, I think that's an excellent point that Commissioner Inman raises, because clearly we're dealing here with the money that's available. But the hit, and I think this is the point that she's making, is really far more severe than just being able to take care of what we've already programmed. We might be programming some, a similar amount, as she indicates historically, that is not getting taken care of either and is being moved over. That's a very interesting comment. I'm going to be using this chart tomorrow at a speech with the American Society of Civil Engineers, and I think I will make that point.
This also does show the loss of other opportunities for local funds or other revenue sources that are not strictly within this dip.
Other comments from the Commission?
And, well, I would just add one thing I did say at the beginning when I introduced the ITIP. They have not proposed any delays out in the last 2 years, so that is something that we'll have to take into account as we move forward.
So we are not recommending the delays was to leave the flexibility to the Commission so that they could optimize their working with the entire program.
So next on our agenda to speak is Kern Cog. Kern is proposing overall deletions of $22.6 million. Consistent with the ITIP, they are proposing to delete construction from the Route 14 Freeman Gulch widening and the Route 395 Alancha Cartago projects, and they're closing out environmental for the Route 395 southbound. And they also are not proposing any delays for the last 2 years.
Did I try and use the... Okay. Oh, I have to. Okay, yes. Good afternoon, Director Captain and Commissioners and Commission staff. Thank you for the opportunity to address you on KernCog's regional priorities as they are reflected in our revised 2016 RTIP resubmittal. The KernCog 2016 RTIP resubmittal is consistent both with KernCog's regional priorities as well as consistent with recommendations made for the Caltrans ITIP. Our hope is that our two highest priorities remain intact through this difficult process. Our highest priority is the State Route 5859 Centennial Corridor project, which continues to advance to the design and rights-of-way phase. Today, Mr. Thomas could not be here, but I do have with me Mr. Nick Fiddler, who is a Public Works Director for the City of Bakersfield. So in a moment, we'll bring him up here. But to continue, the State Route 5899 Centennial Corridor Project meets and exceeds the national goals and performance management measures spelled out in federal code and achieves nationally significant freight-related goals. These include improving the national freight network, strengthening the ability of rural communities to access national and international trade markets, as well as supporting regional economic development. The project also accomplishes these priorities by protecting the environment, reducing air pollution and congestion, improving surface transportation network efficiency, maintaining valuable infrastructure investments and good repair, as well as providing both mobility access as well as jobs to some of the more economically disadvantaged communities in the nation. At this time, if I may, I'll ask Mr. Fiddler to come up here to just provide you a quick overview of the project. So I do thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, commissioners and staff. Like Joe said, I am Nick Fiddler, Public Works Director for the City of Bakersfield. First of all, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the CTC for all of its support for the construction of the West Side Parkway and your continued support for the State Route 58 and 99 connector of the Centennial Corridor. This connection is a vital connection to our community. Improves the freight movements through our community. Currently, the State Route 58 terminates right in the center of Bakersfield. So this connection will improve freight movement north and south of California, for California. Ultimately, this connection provides a link from I-5 to State Route 58 and effectively all the way to I-40. TRIP is currently under construction of significant operational improvements to the State Route 99 and 58 interchange, which will facilitate the Centennial Corridor connection. To date, Caltrans has signed and approved the record of decision for this project, and the City of Bakersfield is currently in the process of acquiring the right-of-way necessary to construct, and we've already achieved 75% of those right-of-ways. The project, due to the magnitude of this project, it will be constructed in multiple phases. We anticipate the first phase of this project will go into construction later this year. In addition to the Centennial Corridor connection piece, this project will include a vital link to our multi-use path. We're proposing to construct a 1.25-mile multi-use path parallel to the corridor, which will ultimately connect to the current existing 30-mile multi-use path located on the Kern River Parkway. So it's a significant improvement to the community. It gives them direct access to commercial, retail, and recreational areas within the community. Again, I would like to thank the CTC for their continued support of this project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next county up on the agenda, the list, is Orange County Transportation Authority. And I neglected to say earlier, but I'll tell you the pages 42 and 43 in the Red Book. Orange County is proposing to delete $33.283 million overall, and they're delaying over $88 million to the last 2 years of the STIP. They are proposing a new project, a rail bridge replacement project, for $5.7 million in 17-18, which currently is overprogrammed. And I just want to remind, if we have a new project, we should have the PID for that too. Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the commission and staff. Darrell Johnson with the Orange County Transportation Authority. Should I just be going through this?
I think so. I mean, they're trying to fix it, and
okay.
we can hear you.
All right, thank you, Will. We pride ourselves on creating an integrated and balanced transportation system as part of our sales tax measure. We try to emulate that within the STIP. And we've provided you with a handout, which I'm going to refer to in just a moment, because I think there's two things that I would like to draw your attention to.
we understand the benefits that the STIP brings. We also understand the job that you have in front of you, which is not a fun job as it relates to
Well, they,
okay.
Turn that off, Daryl, and let's see if we can get you to speak at one of these others.
Maybe it's that,
And that appears to be
or a hand mic.
the problem.
There you go.
And so speakers will even be able to sit down.
I wanted to stare you down. Well, I wanted to
Yeah,
stare you
that's
right
all
at,
right.
right at you. So, so just to get back on track, our numbers really are going from 165 million to 128 million in the STIP, and that's important. But I would like to maybe just change the discussion real quickly. 10 years ago, in 2004, our STIP, 2006, our STIP for Orange County was $392 million. 2008, $389 million. 2010, $298 million. So on and so on and so on, to where we're down to $128 million. On this handout here, on the back, the bottom right, I've done a chart that looks at two things. If we had just grown the STIP by population or CPI, two very basic methods to grow the STIP, we should be in the neighborhood of 420 to 480 million. So I would point out that we're not really talking about 33 or 36 million dollars. We're talking about $300 million of funding loss for Orange County. And I think that's the real message that I would like to convey on behalf of OCTA, because we're taking your job at hand, which is to reduce and deprogram, but where we really should be is closer to $400 million over the 5-year period in Orange County to keep up with jobs and population growth in the projects and programs that we need to do. And we'll continue to make that point wherever we can, because we think it's important. With that, if we had that $400 million, we would have been able to provide more than 12,000 jobs, reduce 230,000 tons of CO2 out of the atmosphere. We could have done a multitude of freeway and highway and HOV improvements. We couldn't have built an entire light rail system in the city of Santa Ana for $300 million. So these are real dollars and real projects that aren't happening today. Back to the point of today's hearing, we've reduced the STIP as requested by the Commission, and we've worked closely with Caltrans and our local agencies to put a lot of thought into the most efficient and the best use of the available resources that we have today. We have reduced 36.5. I think your staff indicated $33 million. We do believe that maybe there's a cost savings that we've accounted for differently than the staff. We'd be happy to work that out from a technical standpoint to make sure we're achieving the goals set out by the Commission. We've also looked at the goals of our own board at OCTA. We've looked at our regional transportation plan. We've looked at the sustainable community strategy as adopted by SCAG, and we've looked at the governor's executive orders to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and improve goods movement. So we've tried to take a complete package look at what we're doing. So we're bringing a few things forward. One is we're going to propose to eliminate, very difficult, but to eliminate funding for the I-5 HOV lane operational improvements. The project's being deleted in its entirety, and we have no other funding source to keep that project on track. We're also proposing a significant reduction in funding, which includes the elimination of a delay of the entire construction phase of two projects. We have an auxiliary lane project on Interstate 405 in the Irvine area. It would be eliminated entirely in this submittal, and it was going to provide a significant amount of ramp storage capacity and operational improvements in that corridor. Also on State Route 57, it's one of the major goods movement and truck projects in Orange County. The Lambert Road Interchange Project, it's in the city of Brea. It's our major freight corridor. We're proposing to completely push that out beyond the 5-year limit of the STIP. We do have no other funding opportunities for that as well. We have major improvements under the I-5 under our sales tax measure program from San Clemente all the way to the city of Tustin. And the last segment, we are going to delay one year, but it puts us out of sync with the other projects and programs, therefore creating more problems for the traveling public, a longer construction period, and as indicated by your staff earlier, it will have delay and escalation cost, but it is being moved out 1 year. It was indicated that we are proposing one new project. We believe very importantly that the Losan Rail Corridor is a significant benefit to Orange County and to Southern California, and we have the opportunity to replace a 99-year-old rail bridge on the corridor. We think that it's an important project, and we're also planning for the future by building the bridge in a way that has a double track opportunity in the future. all of these tough decisions reduces our projects. We reduce 5 projects, and 1 is a new project. And then we would be able to look at opportunities for backfilling those, perhaps, but our measure program is completely at capacity at this point as well. So I want the Commission to understand these are true deletions, not just shifts of funding. And then finally, just 1 minute to thank the Commission and Caltrans for the proposed ITIP funding for the Laguna Niguel to San Juan Capistrano passing siding project. It's our understanding that the $3 million program to the project is currently proposed to remain in the program. We thank you for that. We think it's an important project for both intercity and commuter rail in Southern California for both Metrolink and Amtrak. And then finally, just want to thank the Commission and the Commission staff for working on this very difficult project or difficult process. We understand the challenge before you, and we would respectfully request that you adopt our revised RTIP in its entirety as proposed. And thank you for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Questions from the Commission?
Question here.
Commissioner Dunn.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Daryl. You're the consummate transportation professional, and you recognize how Orange County has been quite innovative in managing delivery of so many projects and so many different delivery methods. I'm particularly concerned with the deletion of SR 73 to Oso Parkway, only because, having recently listened to an economic development an economic study coming out of South Orange County, the traffic impacts of South Orange County actually have caused South Orange County's unemployment rate to increase while the rest of the county is decreasing. And there's zero population growth, zero housing, and it all stems in a great portion to not having transportation solutions in South Orange County. I'm wondering, considering, and everybody knows, Jim Arp referenced it earlier yesterday about the economic impacts of what these cuts are doing to our economy. Has your board taken a look at that? Do they have solutions, legislation? I mean, what does the OCTA board, from a policy standpoint, think is the solution here?
So, Commissioner Dunn and other members, the board as a whole is very concerned about the actions that we are taking. We responded to the direction of the Commission very quickly, and we went straight to our board and we had a detailed discussion of that. I think they understand the challenges. The one concern they continue to express is that they believe there is a priority that needs to be reviewed at the state level.
Yes.
As you all know, the truck weight fees are a consistent issue that gets talked about. And of course, in Orange County, you can't have this conversation about priorities without also bringing the words high-speed rail into the discussion. So they do think that there should be some review of the priorities before we look at new revenue sources. However, with that said, they fully understand the economic impacts that we are seeing in a negative way with these delay of projects and programs. As we continue to look at our own sales tax forecast, the economy is changing. There are bright spots and there are less bright spots. And at the same time, we're seeing a return in competitive bids going up and more pressure on commodity prices and more pressure on raw materials. So we're getting hit from it from both directions.
All sides.
But at the same time, we're trying to advance wherever we can. The particular project that you referenced is basically fourth in a series of 4 segments.
Right.
And the idea is to get them done as soon as we can, as quickly as we can, for a variety of reasons. And the delay on a project of this size is significant just from an inflationary cost.
Very good. Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Inman.
Well, also, Daryl, when we go to the north there, that 5760 intersection is ranked as one of the top bottlenecks in the country, I believe.
Yes.
And clearly in the RTP, I think it's called out. So by eliminating any of that work close by, we're certainly not helping, right, in terms of the economic impact. And I look at it, given our directive to increase our competitiveness with our sustainable freight strategy, and how do we accomplish those goals at the same time when we already have choke points and we're liable to have them longer.
Commissioner Inman, I think you're right on. The 5760 interchange is critical, and we've done mainline widening and improvements on the 57 in Orange County, and we had two projects that we think feed right into that interchange, which is the Lambert Road interchange project, and then what we would call a 57 northbound truck climbing lane. We think that those two projects plus the interchange projects has major benefit in that freight corridor, and because of this, we're unable to do our two pieces of that, if you will.
Okay. All right, thank you, Mr. Johnson. Next, we'll hear from the Los Angeles County Metropolitan Transportation Authority. I think Will Ritter and Don Sepulveda are. I don't see Don coming up.
And you'll find their proposals on pages 25 and 26 in the Red Book. They are not proposing really any net deletions. They are showing showing a deletion in there where that project's already been closed out by Caltrans. So showing it here is kind of a double counting. So that it kind of is a little bit hard to kind of tell what's going on there. But they have proposed a sizable cost increase to their Route 138 Segment 13 project, but they are delaying the construction to 2021. And they also are proposing to delay about half of their light rail vehicle purchase programming to the last 2 years.
Thank you. On behalf of the LA Metro, I'd like to thank the Commission and appreciate the opportunity to present on our 2016 Regional Transportation Improvement Program recommendations. Before I start, I'd just like to congratulate the Commission on their selection of Susan Branson as the next Executive Director for the Commission. And I think, no doubt to all of us, Susan continues to advance the collaboration, the knowledge, and most importantly, the integrity that the Commission brings to its work with all the regions and its statewide transportation partners. And I'd also like to thank Will Kempton for his leadership and service and wish him well in all his endeavors, and undoubtedly envision some other form of his support of transportation throughout the state. So thank you. With respect to our program, I'd like to hopefully leave the Commission with three main points. One is that LA Metro has been a committed partner to the funding of transportation throughout our region and through the state. That we have been strong advocates into finding a statewide transportation funding solution, and that we are under unique circumstances and understand the challenges that are before the Commission with respect to the funding that's available in the STIP, but that we are looking for a statewide prioritization versus the ability for us to simply delete projects beyond the delays that we have brought forward in our original submittal in December of 2015. We do have a presentation that you have, and if you would kind of flip through it with me. On the second page is identification of how our board has acted in respect to our resubmittal of the 2016 Regional Transportation Improvement Program. And what we have recognized due to our circumstances is that we have adopted and are recommending to the state the employment of statewide priorities that are typically used when we get into a budget capacity issue and looking at kind of the allocation plan priorities. We are really down to two projects, the light rail vehicle purchase as well as the SR 138 widening. And I would note that what we have suggested here is that due to the nature of the light rail vehicle purchase, which is actually a project which is under an existing contract award, however, was broken up into a multi-year kind of allocations by the department or by the Commission, that would be acknowledged as kind of the highest priority for funding within the state due to our contractual obligations. And I think we've kind of looked at that and suggest some kind of a recognition to highway projects which would generally fall under a single allocation at the time that the project goes to construction. Under these circumstances, as a transit project, we had the opportunity and worked with the Commission to break up a fairly large commitment of funds over multiple years to help minimize the impact to the state. And as we are showing today, we have, as a part of our 2015 or December 2015 submittal, delayed those allocations as far as we possibly can under our current, contractual obligations. The 138 is another kind of situation where I think for many of the folks in our region, we would look at this project as fundamentally a shop project, starting out to address safety issues on the corridor. Over the course of time that has been developed by the department and is currently being delivered, it is now in capacity expansion project. It's going from 2 to 4 lanes And so therefore, we've recognized that that is a project that we're essentially deferring to the department on how they would look to prioritize it, but is something that we don't feel is in our kind of purview to be making a decision on whether we would suggest the deletion of that project, from the STIP itself. So we recognize that that could be considered either a safety project on the highway system or a capacity expansion project in the state highway system with clear freight benefits. If you turn to the next page, you'll see how this kind of funding works, following along the tables that are typically employed by the commission, to show where the current programming is kind of changed to, the recommended funding. As I mentioned before, we've received over $200 million in prior allocations for the light rail vehicle purchase, and we have a little over $102 million remaining. Those were previously identified in fiscal years 18 and 19, and we have subsequently spread those out over the 2016 STIP period, going out all the way to 2021. And then similarly with the 138 project, as Ms. Jansen noted, we did have an opportunity to repurpose savings that were realized in the right-of-way on one of the original segments of the 138 corridor, and we felt it was most appropriate in consultation with District 7 to actually aggregate those funds onto this remaining segment that we had to push out to be able to address any cost implications that we'd have with basically, as you can see, a 4-year delay in the project. So we felt that that was an appropriate kind of use of those funds in consultation with Caltrans. If you flip to the second or the third page or the fourth of the presentation number there, I'll just give you kind of a sense of how much money LA Metro has been continuing to bring into transportation in the Los Angeles County region. And this is not to minimize, the amount of STIP funding, because clearly it is a very, important source of funds for us that we employ very strategically on various improvements, but I think also recognition that it's been a long time since the STIP has been the source of funding that we once knew and we believe is appropriate, for the state to be using. But that said, we have gone to our voters 3 times to seek funds. We've been fortunately successful in doing that, and we are currently working on a 4th half-cent sales tax, which would go another 40 years, providing a significant investment to a balanced transportation system, including a number of improvements on the state highway system to support the movement of passengers and goods, and to also address some of the operational improvements. And that's something that we'd be happy to share here again with you in the coming days as that plan is actually released for its first time to the public. The 5th page just gives you an understanding of how the STIP is actually being employed strategically across the projects that are currently in the 2016 RTIP, and recognizing that, as I said, it is significantly important for these types of projects as we're, many of them with the 138, developing in collaboration with the department. As we get to the 6th page, just kind of recognizes our legislative efforts. We've actually sent 3 letters in support of transportation funding proposals to the governor, as well as Senator Bell and Assemblymember Frazier, who have been bringing forward, I think, the most progressive, holistic approaches to a statewide transportation funding concept. In addition to that, if you go to the next page, we have actually been beyond just simply sending letters. We've testified at various committee hearings, strongly urging the legislature to act. We've been meeting with members and expressing our concerns to our Los Angeles County delegation. And we've also been hosting a number of tours, trying to bring down our legislators, and to make them very aware of what we're trying to accomplish and why it is so important that there has to be a statewide transportation fix that goes on this. And then lastly, we just a couple slides to recognize the specific details of the 2 projects that we're highlighting here, recognizing kind of what we're looking to do with the light rail vehicles as we expand the rail system in Los Angeles County. We successfully opened the Gold Line Extension Phase 2B out to Azusa on March 5th, and we're planning for the opening of the Expo line on May 20th, and those are 2 areas where these light rail vehicles are going. You flip the page, you'll actually see some photos of the plant that's actually located in Palmdale. This is the Kinky Shara plant where those vehicles are actually being assembled here in the United States. And we have received 29 of the approximate 120 vehicles that the STIP is supporting. And I think many of us are very proud about those jobs being here in California and in particular in Los Angeles County. The last pages are focused on the State Route 138 corridor project to give you an idea of all the improvements that are going on into the 138 corridor. So this is a very significant kind of program Also highlights that we are working as well, not only to address the 138 corridor and the safety issues, operational issues, and also the freight demands that are in that corridor, but we're also looking at another facility which we've called the High Desert Corridor, which is kind of a long-term multimodal type of project to address those needs. And the last is just a picture of the various segments to give you a sense of what is out there. And what are the needs that exist in a corridor of such nature. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have. But as I said before, we sincerely appreciate the support of the Commission in all of our efforts in delivering needed improvements throughout Los Angeles County. So thank you.
Thank you, Will. Any questions or comments from the Commission? Commissioner Inman.
Well, I have a question on the rail car order. Are we actually under legal contract on all 117? Because it's written, it says there's an option for 39.
Yes.
Have you already exercised that option?
We have exercised the options. That's correct. And that's where I'd note is that we have gone through an extensive amount of effort working with our legal counsel and with our procurement department when we brought forward the delays that were identified. We were trying to meet in our original December 2015 submittal the requested kind of deferral of 50% of the funding in our 2014 STIP into the 2 new outer years of the 2016 STIP period. And so we've been able to accommodate that, but we were at the point where we do have to maintain these commitments. And as I say, we're trying to do everything we can as far as moving monies around, but there are limitations in doing that.
So you have a binding contract?
Correct.
All right. Will, is your sales tax program that you're working on right now an extension of an existing increment or a new increment?
Both. We are looking at fundamentally what Alameda County was successful in passing in 2014, which would start a new half-cent sales tax starting in 2017, out for approximately 40 years. And then from that period of time, starting in 2039 or 2040, when the existing Measure R half-cent sales tax expires, we would continue that for the remaining 18 years. So it's a big ask of our voters again, but we feel that it is something that they recognize the value of and the challenges that are before us in our county.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we're going to hear from the Tulare County Association of Governments. Ted Smalley is here.
Tulare County Association of Governments, it's in page 77 of your red book. Tulare has proposed to delete $5 million of overall in projects consistent with the ITIP. They are proposing to delete construction for the Route 99 Tegas widening project. They have proposed an increase for the Route 99 Betty Drive interchange project to reflect Caltrans cost increases. They have proposed delays of $3 million for the year 2019 and 20.
Thank you. Good afternoon, commissioners and staff. First of all, thank you for your efforts and help trying to get the word out of what we need to do, especially thanks to Will, who came down recently to our transportation awards and balanced the message of celebration, but we have more work to do. And I don't know a better person to have handled that type of message, so I thank you for that. We also want to thank our district staff and headquarters staff as we tried to deal with the complexity. As you can see, we're one of the big projects that gets taken off here. And so what's left for us is, in effect, we've lost 70% of our projects that were in the ITIP and STIP. What's left is money for the State Route 99 corridor. So we're asking what little remains that we keep that. It's consistent with Caltrans's proposal that says, suggests that some of these projects continue to RTL. And this 99 project that unfortunately is having to be deleted, at least right now, is very close to being ready to list. And we think that it would compete very well for the new freight program. On the one Betty Drive interchange that was mentioned earlier, we actually spoke with Laurel earlier today. This is a project that's actually programmed in this year. We were concerned that right-of-way was not going to get done 6 months ago. Our District 6 staff have done a great job. We anticipate now it will be able to come in for the May. So we'll be working with Laurel to adjust that particular project. So if that, two principal requests we would ask is, one, if we could not have any more cuts to us. Our cuts are, like I said, about 70%. We understand, we appreciate the district and headquarters trying to still set this project up for freight funding, and I don't know that we could ask for more than that kind of effort. And then two, that the Commission and Caltrans do look at projects that are in the STIP that are removed that clearly are on the National Freight Network that are freight projects, that they be given highest priority for the new freight program that's coming around over the next few years. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioners? No questions, Ted. Thank you very much. Next, we'll hear from the San Diego Association of Governments. Gary Gallegos, the Executive Director, is here.
San Diego is on page 53 of the Red Book. SANDAG has proposed to delete $38,790,000. They are proposing to combine their I-5 HOV extension project into one CMGC project under PPNO 615C. They have also proposed to delete $41 million from that project. They have not proposed to delay any programming to the last 2 years, but they have proposed to add programming for PPM in 1920 and 2021. There is no PPM target for 2021, so they exceeded their amount available. Since we must delete programming, they should wait until the next dip period to program additional PPM.
Good afternoon, Commissioners, and first let me start by thanking you for your leadership and your partnership. SANDAG's strategy continues to be completion of regionally significant projects that help us relieve congestion, increase job growth, and improve overall mobility while meeting the goals of SB 375. And our proposal focuses on the I-5 North Coast Corridor Program, and we see this as an integral part of our strategy. You probably heard me say this before, that our strategy has been what I would characterize as a wow strategy. Wow, they finally are doing something about it, and wow, they're done, and wow, it works. But now I got to add a wow to it, and wow, the state is broke. But our strategy has been sort of, get in, get it done, get out, and make it work at a corridor level. And I-5 is consistent with that strategy and the overall long-term strategy. And what we've laid out in this brochure, the first piece in the back, there's a pull out that deals about with phase one. But I want to first talk about the overall strategy that we have on the North Coast Corridor Program. It's a $6 billion package of transportation, environmental, coastal access projects that we believe will really improve the quality of life for residents in the San Diego region, creates a stronger local and regional economy for the future. It enhances our coastal environment and improves the movement of people and goods. We see the North Coast Corridor as a vital economic lifeline, not only to the region, but to the state of California as a whole, and that it connects through San Diego, connects the rest of the state to Mexico and points beyond. Again, reminding the Commission that Mexico continues to be California's largest export market. So there, if you look at where we're trading, there's a lot of trade happening with Mexico. We believe approximately $45 billion worth of goods moved through this corridor in 2010, and we see that's continuing to grow not only by truck but by our Lausanne rail corridor. Interstate 5 alone handles more than 700,000 trips every day, including commuters, goods movement, and visitors, and people that come to recreate in this great place we live called Southern California. Our improvements on this corridor call for 27 miles from La Jolla to Oceanside in 3 primary areas. First, Interstate 5 express lane projects, coastal rail transit enhancements, and environmental protections and coastal access improvements. I want to take this moment to highlight one of the commissioners, Commissioner Kehoe, then Senator Kehoe, because the implementation of this corridor was set forward with the passage of a bill that she authored, SB 468, that really tried to ensure the coordination of all these things we're trying to do to really look at this more holistically and make it a better project. And, you know, over and over you hear probably how difficult it is to work with the Coastal Commission, and, you know, I am just very proud and pleased to share with the Commission that this project, because it's a more holistic project, we've gotten unanimous votes out of the Coastal Commission. Largest project the Coastal Commission as a whole has ever looked at. I would share with the Commission that I think our public works program that we put together is probably a model for others to consider, because we really changed the paradigm about how we were going to look at this project. And I just want to compliment Senator Kehoe here, because she was key in helping us get there in terms of looking at this in a more holistic way. That it's, you know, and too often I would argue, you know, we pit all our different needs against each other. The transit guys think we shouldn't be building any roads. The road guys think we shouldn't be building any transit. And the active transportation guys think they should have it all, right? And so somewhere in between the answer is that. And I think this project is an example of how we can do that. The first phase of this project is estimated to cost around $700 million. Of this amount, the STIP accounts for about 18%. And like Orange County and LA, you know, we remember the good old days when we had $300 or $400 million in a STIP cycle, and here they continue to shrink. And there's really, in closing here, there's two requests that we have of the Commission today. The first part is, as you look forward to the 2016 STEP, we also want to remind the Commission about the 2014 STEP and the $99 million that are programmed for this project that hopefully come back later this year, and we would hope that you would act on those. The second part focuses on the 2016 STEP and the hearing we're having today. And Sandiag's original proposal was to program an additional $85 million for this first phase that would have made this project a reality. In response to CTC's reduction in the fund estimate, Sandiag has proactively submitted a revised STIP that reduces our what we thought was originally our programming target by about $41 million. And we believe that that represents at least our fair share of the $750 million that unfortunately you guys have to cut around the state. But we also think that this project is really important, and we'd like to keep it on schedule and not delay, like we've heard, you know, other projects being having to do that. And we have tools to do that, and one of the tools is AB 3090. And we believe that we would be able to shift some priorities internally within the San Diego region so that we could keep this much critical project on schedule right now. But AB 3090 would help us as we try to balance the needs around our region in San Diego, so that in the future, when San Diego got money, that we would, you know, be able to apply those monies through AB 3090 to make our program work over the long period. We understand that the Commission's in a difficult position. However, I again want to close by saying I think this is a project that's really significant just beyond our region, and we ask for your consideration in moving forward and recognizing that we are willing to reduce and cut back, but we also want to be responsible in figuring out, are there ways that we can still keep things, critical things moving that will be a plus not only for our region but for the state as a whole.
Thank you, Gary. Questions for Mr. Gallegos? Commissioner Medaffer.
Just a comment that I think, and certainly Commissioner Kehoe would speak to this, it was her legislation, but a unique issue here with this particular cut is that the law requires the project to be built the way the legislation stipulates, and that is rail and freeway all at the same time, along with the transit piece. And the reason for that was because to minimize the environmental impact to the lagoons. And so I think what Sandag is proposing is a reasonable solution that makes sense, and I certainly would support, you know, the 3090 approach as the time goes forward once funding becomes available. Hopefully funding becomes available.
And Commissioner Medaffer, if I could just add, and I think that the picture highlights what Commissioner Medaffer is talking about. You know, we have really sensitive lagoons in San Diego, and we have freeway projects, bridges that go over the lagoons. We got a railroad, a Class 1, our major Class 1 freight railroad that goes over the lagoon. And we got, local streets that cross the lagoons. And one of the things that we were able to accomplish with Senator Kehoe's leadership is how do we get into this lagoons once, again, sort of that wow factor, get in once, get it done, and get out of there. And so as we approach this, and I should failed in highlighting and thanking Caltrans for the great leadership and partnership that we have together with them. We are doing this as a CMGC contract. This is one of the pilot contracts in the state, so they're negotiating. But this, for the commissioners, very untraditional or not the typical tradition. And here we're partnering with, Caltrans is taking the lead on a CMGC, but there are railroad bridges, highway bridges, lagoons, active transportation piece, local improvements that we're making, all bundled up into one CMGC contract. And so this is really government working together at all different levels, but at local, regional, and statewide level.
Commissioner Kehoe.
Just, Gary, thank you for the kind remarks. And it was really a regional effort and discussion. A number of the Sandag board members were actively involved. And once the bill was passed, Gary and the Sandag team, really took it in hand and are working toward a good solution. And I appreciate you calling out the holistic nature of it. You can tell by the picture, it's some of the most sensitive habitat, coastal habitat in the state. We tried to reduce the impacts as much as possible. So I think it's as good as it could get, and I think. And I'm glad it's moving forward. So we appreciate everybody's efforts, all the Sandag folks, and Caltrans, and the cities around the county that make up the Sandag board.
This is one of those projects that at the end will end up with what I would characterize as a net environmental benefit. Because for good or bad, when we built the bridges many, many moons ago, we were trying to, look at minimizing costs. So as you can see, particularly the last bridge at the very top of the page is Interstate 5. So you can see that the length of that bridge is, pretty narrow, so this lagoon suffers from not getting the benefit of tidal flushing. So with Caltrans, we've worked along with the resource agencies in a collaborative way. Like I said, you show me too many examples where you get staff recommendation and unanimous approval from the California Coastal Commission, and we've done that twice here on this project because we're going to make those bridges longer. We're going to improve them, so that not only transportation wins, but our environment wins.
Can I ask one more thing?
Absolutely.
I just want to say, with all the participants and the stakeholders that negotiated this bill, the linchpin was Deanna Spain, my policy director in the district office. Everybody in the region knows her, and she was the point person on just a million aspects of the bill. So I have to call her out for special attention today.
Gary, a quick question on the double tracking. You have two projects proposed as part of this overall corridor program. Are those not gap closures in the sense of the double tracking?
Yeah, so there's a weak link, and there's probably more than one weak link in the second busiest rail corridor in the country that we call Low-San. And we are partnering with our neighbors in Orange County and Los Angeles and Ventura and on up the coast. But a big chunk of the San Diego piece is single tracked. And so we've been working, that was part of the collaborative piece of the bill that the senator passed and the governor wrote into law. And so we started out with about half of our rail corridor being double tracked. I mean, the other half was single tracked. Today we're at about 2/3 of the rail track, so we've been making some steady progress. But one of the big focus has been these bridges, particularly the ones across the lagoons. And on the rail side, the bridges are old and not inconsistent with what we heard from Darrell Johnson and the proposal that OCTA is bringing forward and replacing one of the 99-year-old bridges in Orange County. That we have several of those in San Diego County. They're old timber bridges that got to be replaced, and so there's been a focus. So, well, kind of a long-winded answer, but yes, we're working at closing these gaps to first make the rail line more reliable, but ultimately give it more capacity so that we can have an alternate as to how you get from LA to San Diego other than driving.
Thank you. Oh, Commissioner Inman.
Gary, thank you for your leadership. We all do appreciate the integrated approach that you continue to take with your partners down there, and I think it shows. The Coastal Commission approval, does that have any expiration date on it?
So the individual projects do. What we were able to do, again, with the piece of legislation is we did what's known as a public works plan that, in essence, would mirror somewhat, let's say, a general plan that a city would do, or a long-range transportation plan. And so, as long as we bring projects, but we still have to bring project by project, and we got to go back before the Coastal Commission, and we got to demonstrate to the Coastal Commission that the projects that we're bringing back are consistent with the plan that was adopted. Now, I would say that the plan has, even though the long-term plan has some restrictions on it from the perspective that if there are new things, new species that get listed, new water quality requirements that get placed on us, and I'm an old guy, been around here for a long time, and I can tell you the rules aren't getting easier, they're getting harder all the time. So we will have to adapt to those in the future, and there's a process to do that. And so we've laid out, I think, a pretty good process so that it builds as much certainty but yet protection as possible.
Commissioner Dunn.
Gary, this is sort of a harebrained question because I just don't know, so I apologize for that. But on high-speed rail, the decision was recently made to go from Central Valley to San Jose. And those of us that were watching this, hoping that it would somehow come south if you're going to do this thing, the commitment is first leg to San Jose, second leg, complete environmental documents, third leg, MOU, I'm hoping, with Southern California of some kind for $4 billion of cap and trade money to upgrade our systems to prepare it ultimately for high-speed rail. Is that just to the Union Station, Anaheim benefit? Does any of that, or are you still like second phase of that wouldn't be part of the deal, that maybe that money could help with your double track system?
So a little bit of a complicated answer here, and
yeah,
look
sorry,
at my partner,
it's a weird question.
Daryl Johnson here, but so the first place gets it to really Union Station and actually to Anaheim in Orange County. That's the first phase. Now we're in phase 2, but our phase of that would go through Riverside, San Bernardino, Riverside County,
Right.
into San Diego.
Right.
Generally, and there's still some debate on whether it's the 15 or the 215 going through Riverside and 15 going on into San Diego. So that's the next phase. But as we've collectively worked with high-speed rail, if the phase is to get from San Francisco to LA, there are needs and opportunities in order to make that investment the state's made a better investment by having connections to other rails. The things don't work in isolation. They're part of a network.
Mm-hmm.
And so to the extent that we could make improvements on the low sand corridor that would reduce, and I think Commissioner of past, that some of you may remember, was John Chalker, that his goal was to try to reduce that time frame to under 2 hours. And I think collectively we have been working all the counties with high-speed rail with the idea that, all right, you need to make improvements on the low sand corridor, not only in San Diego but in Orange County and in Los Angeles. And I'm one that argues that it's not always how fast we go, but it's how soon we get there.
Exactly.
And I think sometimes we get stuck on how fast we go.
Exactly.
And not how soon we get there. And I still believe that if we had some dollars and we could be more strategic, and I think there's a healthy partnership with Orange County and LA, that there are improvements that could be made on the low sand corridor that I think are essential for high-speed rail being a better project, even if it only gets to LA in phase 1.
Gotcha. Okay. I will keep that in mind because we need to make sure that all three legs are working at the same time and not just go to San Jose. Southern California has to benefit. We're not getting our fair share of cap and trade now. And, you know, I mean, I think points need to be made on all of that front.
I think you just need to add on, it's the second busiest rail corridor in the United States.
Yeah.
And my focus was on the South, but I look, if we're going to be successful at something like this, I think we got to be successful as a state.
Yes.
And so I would also suggest that, you know, the same points I made about the low sand corridor are probably germane up north on the Capitol corridor, right? And so we got to figure out how we make this work so it lifts all the boats in California, not just some of the boats.
Great. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Gary. Next, we're going to hear from Shirley Medina with the Riverside County Transportation Commission.
Riverside is on page 46 and 47 of the Red Book. Riverside has proposed to delete over $23 million overall. They have decreased the construction funding for the I-15 French Valley Parkway Interchange project from $41.5 million to $15.3 million. They have also proposed to delay construction for this project to 1920. They have also proposed 1-year delays for right-of-way and construction of the Route 60 truck lanes project that is partially funded with SHOP. They have proposed right-of-way funding for one new project, the I-15 Railroad Canyon Road Interchange project in 1617.
That sounds good. Hi, Shirley Medina, RCTC. Good afternoon. Yes, we have 5 projects total now in our RTIP, and we're not used to it being under 10. 4 are capital projects, and then planning and programming and monitoring funds. Our capital projects can be categorized as goods movement, safety, and active transportation. In response to the zero STIP, we delayed our projects, as Teresa indicated, 1 to 2 years. And in response to the negative STIP, we went ahead and reduced our amount on one of our projects by the target list that the CTC staff provided us, which was in about $32 million. I'm just going to go quickly over our projects. The 60 truck climbing lane, the State Route 60 is an east-west corridor starting just west of the 710 in LA County, providing an alternative route for heavy-duty trucks heading eastbound from the ports, traveling through Los Angeles, San Bernardino, and Riverside counties, and intersecting with I-10 in the Banning Pass. The 60 truck climbing and descending lanes project will address safety, operational, and air quality issues east of the city of Moreno Valley in an area we call the Badlands. The Badlands is a very hilly and winding road. It's a 2-lane highway right now, 2-lane in each direction. And as you can imagine, the conflict with heavy-duty trucks going up and down hilly, windy roads and vehicles traveling creates a large safety issue, of which we received over $30 million in SHOP funds. Thank you for that. Our TIP also includes 2 interchange projects along I-15, which is one of the most heavily traveled truck routes in several counties and even states. The I-15 and French Valley Parkway interchange will be a new interchange in the city of Temecula, which has experienced tremendous population and employment growth in the past few decades, and is also a tourist destination for those of us that enjoy grapes. The I-15 Railroad Canyon Interchange is located in the city of Lake Elsinore, and similar to Temecula, has seen significant population and employment growth over the past few decades. These 2 interchanges experience significant queuing on I-15, which creates dangerous conditions and conflicts with heavy-duty trucks. By adding a new interchange and improving an existing interchange along I-15, the safety, congestion, and overall quality of life will improve for residents and visitors of these communities, as well as the flow of goods movement. The last capital project we have is an active transportation project in the Coachella Valley, which is called CV Link. CV Link is a 50-mile multi-use path for walking, bicycling, and low-speed electrical vehicles. The ultimate path will link the city of Desert Hot Springs to the Salton Sea, roughly along the Whitewater River and Tockwitz Creek. The first phase will construct the path from Palm Springs to the city of Coachella. This project received about $10 million in ATP Cycle 1 funding. Thank you for that. I think it's still one of the highest amount projects that has received funding from the program. And Lori is nodding.
Yeah, and they're not happy with it.
All of our proposed STIP projects are included in the SCAG 2016 Regional Transportation Plan Sustainability Community Strategy that has been found to meet air quality and SB 375 goals. And the 2016 RTP will be adopted by SCAG next month. The projects are also consistent with local planning and programming documents, such as the Western Riverside County Transportation Uniform Mitigation Fee Program, our county multi-species habitat conservation program, and the voter-approved Measure A half-cent sales tax. One thing that others have noted is the small amount of funding that we're getting from the STIP, and it's remarkably shrinking over the last decade. And looking at the amount of STIP that's funding these 5 projects, it's 16% of the total of the whole project, of all the projects. This is almost like a local match. And this is something that we're helping and working with our legislators to help fix that problem. And at our last week's commission meeting, our commission adopted a resolution that helps support the effort to help fix this situation with the STIP funding. And one thing in the resolution, and it was unanimously supported, and it's because we left out some bad words, like the T word, taxes, and the F word, fees, by not indicating that we want to support this, the state in increasing taxes or implementing new fees. Keeping those words out has really, helped us get that support. And the focus on that resolution was stabilizing the funding. And so, therefore, we were able to get a unanimous vote on that. So I'd be happy to share that with the commission.
Any questions for Shirley? Comments? Thank you, Shirley. We'll now move on to Ventura County. And, Peter, you're standing in for Darren today.
Yes, Ventura is proposing to delete $17 million, and this is for 2 projects, environmental, which I believe is being done with other funds. And they are spreading their PPM in order to get a kind of a delay there.
Okay, commissioners, just so you know, Darren Kettle just got out of a meeting with the city managers discussing the expenditure plan for the sales tax measure that we're finalizing. So he would normally do this, but that was important. In the 2014 STIP, you approved VCTC's request to program $17 million for the project approval environmental documents phase for 2 significant Ventura County priorities, the widenings of the 101 and 118 freeways. The intent was that this quarter-level preliminary work would set the stage for a county transportation sales tax measure for which these projects would form the centerpiece. Given the significance of these projects, VCTC later decided and has put into its initial RTIP submittal to use the county's federal apportionments instead to advance these 2 projects without the need for STIP funds, so that we do not have to wait until 17-18 when the STIP funds were programmed. So now this decision of VCTC is proven fortuitous. Distressed as we are with the STIP's condition, we're gratified that VCTC is substituting federal funds for these 2 projects has helped with the overall situation. You'll be interested to know, however, that the STIP problem is a critical component of the presentation that our executive director has been making on the sales tax measure. The presentation highlights a Los Angeles Times headline about the $750 million STIP reduction, and this way he's using the STIP situation as a selling point for why our voters had better start looking at a local revenue source for transportation. But we've also let our legislators know that even if a local measure passes, we still need the state's partnership with at least a moderately funded STIP to provide the needed transportation improvements. And along those lines, our board has taken a specific position in support of the transportation revenue packages that have been proposed by the leadership in Sacramento. So with that, I will. That's what I've got. And I will also say, on a personal note, I haven't had a chance to talk to him, but for Executive Director Kempton, best wishes and in your future endeavors.
Thank you, Peter. Any questions for Peter? All right, we'll move on then to San Bernardino County. Andrea Zurich. Am I saying that correctly? I just not newly married, but
well, actually, I'm standing in for Andrea today altogether.
That's Wendy.
Congratulations on your retirement, sir.
Actually, Wendy, I was looking through my reading glasses at you. I'm sorry. So, Wendy, thank you. But Wendy is relatively newly married.
Yeah. Last week it was 4 years. So
yeah.
It's relatively new in comparison to many others that have shown a good example.
Yeah. Well, Wendy, that just goes to show you, don't get old. Welcome, and let's hear from the staff, and then we'll go on to
Let me just
your
say that in the Red Book, the San Bernardino's on 51 and 52. They are proposing to delete their 4 projects that are in the 3 early years of the STIP and bring in 2 new projects.
Good afternoon. Stambeg has evaluated our delivery program over the next 5 years with the goal of developing a funding plan that understands the constraints that the CTC is operating under by moving projects into the last 2 years of the STIP. We deprogrammed a total of $125.8 million from the first 3 years of the STIP, which are the most constrained years, and have met our deprogramming target. We're proposing to move, as Laurel said, all of the projects currently programmed and instead replace them with 2 new projects that we believe align well with the STIP and with the state's infrastructure goals. The projects that have been deprogrammed from the 2014 STIP include $25 million in fiscal year 17-18 for the State Route 210 widening from Highland Avenue to San Bernardino Avenue, $39.8 million in 17-18 for right-of-way and design for the Interstate 10 Express Lanes project, $38.5 million for Interstate 215 Mount Vernon Washington interchange project, and $22.6 million in 16-17 for the Interstate 215 Barton Road interchange project. We believe we can deliver these projects using a combination of local and federal funds, with the exception of the Mount Vernon interchange project. Noting the significant deprogramming proposed, we're also proposing to program our PPM funds up to 5% of our county share and propose adding 2 new projects. The first new project is the Redlands Passenger Rail Project at $25.3 million in fiscal year 17-18 for construction. This project is a 9-mile extension of passenger rail service from the San Bernardino Transit Center to the University of Redlands, and it provides connectivity to jobs, healthcare, and education in communities that have struggled to recover economically. It will be ready for construction in June of 2017. And one of the unique features about this project that we're proud of is that we're partnering with a major employer in the area to provide a station at their location, and also with the University of Redlands to provide enhanced station amenities at the university station. We've proposed this project for the STIP because our analysis has shown that this project has fewer opportunities for delivery using alternate funding sources. And in addition, the project is an environmentally sustainable project that will provide an alternative mode of transportation in the I-10 corridor that reduces greenhouse gases as desired by the governor's executive order. Our second project will be in the out years of the 2016 STIP cycle in fiscal year 19-20, and this is the I-15 Express Lanes project at $64.4 million for design build construction. This project will connect to the northern end of the Express Lane project under development in Riverside County and will complement our I-10 Express Lane project, also currently under development. We have proposed this project for programming because the delivery schedule is within the period of availability of STIP programming capacity. But more importantly, this investment helps build capacity and better utilize our limited infrastructure while leveraging additional funds through toll revenues on a major goods movement corridor in California. As we've noted several times over the last 2 days, limited funds are available for new projects and for maintenance, and this project helps advance both of those goals. I'd like to close by thanking CTC and Caltrans staff for their assistance on this. We understand there's still a lot of very difficult work to be done to meet the STIP's funding constraints, but we encourage you to reward those agencies that have taken the initiative to meet or even exceed their deprogramming targets. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Questions for Wendy? Commissioner Inman.
Well, it's not really a question, but I do want to highlight the public-private partnership, I think, in terms of working with Esri. If you haven't been out to see their campus, you need to take a look. And I think for all of us, it impacts our world in terms of the work that they do with their mapping. But it's one of those partnerships I think we want to really encourage, and in a region that has really struggled with low employment numbers or high unemployment, if you want to look on the negative side, I think it really is important for us to try to stretch all of our dollars. And then on the other one, I'm going to have to recuse myself, but I would say go Bulldogs.
Other questions, comments?
Let me just add
Laurel?
a reminder again for new projects. We want to see the PIDs.
Very good. Thank you, Wendy. Now we'll move on to Mono County. We have Jerry LeFrancois, who is with the Mono County Local Transportation Commission.
Yes, Mono County, this is on page 35 and 36 in your book. They're proposing to delete a total of $8.7 million. Consistent with the ITIP, they are proposing to close the Route 14 widening project, close the Route 395 southbound widening project, and delete construction for the Route 395 Alonso Cartago. They are proposing to increase programming for the Route 14 Freeman Gulch widening to keep it fully funded. So they're making up for the deletions in the ITIP and in Kern, and INYO is helping them out with that. So they are proposing that. And then they're proposing some new money for their replacement buses.
Thank you, Commissioners. Good afternoon. Jerry LeFrancois with Mono County LTC. I just have a couple points I'd like to reiterate. Laurel touched on one. We're cutting more than our requested target. We're trying to double that. And our commission is really intent on trying to keep at least one of our regional MOU projects moving forward. For successful, great. We have longstanding MOUs going back to 1998 on the 14-395 corridor. And our commission, as well as the Mono County Board of Supervisors, have written 2 or 3 letters to both legislators, Berry Hill and, Bigelow, talking about not only short-term but long-term fixes. We're one of the few rural counties as a southern county, so we're unique in that way. And the only way these projects get built are with our MOU partnerships, ITIP, and local RIP shares. And so our intent is really trying to keep one project moving forward. Whatever happens, happens. That's going to be the discretion of the commission. So I'm happy to answer any questions, and thank you for your time.
Questions from the commission? Bruce?
Yeah, I'd like to, something I failed to mention, that the reductions in the ITIP hit the rural counties quite significantly and have much less of an impact on the urbanized counties. So that so they have their STIP reductions and then the ITIP reductions as well. So it's a bigger overall effect.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. LeFrancois.
Thank you.
Now we will hear from Santa Barbara, Steve Vandenberg.
Santa Barbara is on page 59 of your red book. Santa Barbara is proposing to increase overall programming by $138,000. They are proposing one delay from 1617 to 1718. They are proposing no deletions or delays to the last 2 years.
Good afternoon, and I believe you've received a copy of a letter that we submitted to the commission, as well as a map that's been handed out to you. You should also have a corridor map. So at the end of this upcoming fiscal year, we're going to be left with 3 projects in the STIP. We've boiled our priorities down to 3, not including PPM. We're no longer using valuable STIP funds on things like local sidewalk projects, bicycle projects, local road repair projects.
We are focusing our funds on projects of state and regional significance in the STIP to match up with the priorities that the Commission has expressed so often in the past when we have gone through previous STIP funding crises. So we've listened and we've reprogrammed or programmed our new funds accordingly. If we did have bicycle, pedestrian, or local road projects that would be remaining in the STIP, we would, of course, be recommending delaying or even deleting those projects to help the Commission meet its STIP reduction goals. But ironically, because we've been such good listeners in the past and have now focused our funds on down to essentially 3 projects, we are challenged to help the Commission meet its programming reduction goals. And I would like to explain the significance of the 3 projects we have remaining, remaining in the STIP by giving you an update on those projects. Our highest priority project that will be remaining in the STIP is the US 101 High Occupancy Vehicle Lane project. It is project 7101 on our page in the STIP. It has a different name in there given to it by Caltrans, but it is known as the US 101 HOV project in Santa Barbara County. This is a project of state significance that has been under development by Caltrans and SBCAG for 20 years. It will eliminate a 16-mile 4-lane bottleneck in South Santa Barbara County and North Ventura County by adding a northbound and southbound lane in each direction. In peak periods, the new lanes will be restricted for commuter buses. We have a very aggressive commuter bus program in partnership with Ventura County, van pools and carpools. And as part of this project, we're also going to we're going to remove left side on and off ramps at various locations in that 16-mile bottleneck that really exacerbate these bottleneck conditions. For about 90 miles from the city of LA proper up to what is the northern fringe of the greater LA region, right around UC Santa Barbara, US 101 is 6 lanes. Except for the 16 miles in North Ventura County and South Santa Barbara County, where it reduces down to 4 lanes. This bottleneck has an enormous economic impact on many different levels, local, regional, and state. But perhaps most significantly for the Commission, when I-5 closes at the Grapevine, as it does multiple times per year due to fires, snow, mudslides, US 101 is the only direct north-south route in California for truck traffic. And when those closures occur, truck traffic increases from about 7,000 trucks a day to about 17,000 trucks a day. And when that is mixed with commuter, local, and the normal interregional traffic we see on a daily basis going between LA and San Francisco, these trucks can be stuck in that bottleneck trying to go between Ventura and the Santa Barbara area for hours, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours. There are no alternate facilities, no parallel routes to US 101 during these conditions. This is just a crippling, it's a senseless crippling of productivity that we would like to eliminate. And we believe very strongly that the Commission should continue to support the elimination of this bottleneck as it has for the first 3 phases of the project, which have reduced the bottleneck from 16 miles down to 10 miles. So the Commission has partnered with us on the first 3 phases, and now we're down to a 10-mile bottleneck. The first 2 phases were completed at a cost of $200 million using STIP, Prop 1B, and our sales tax measure funds. The third phase, with a total cost of $100 million, was allocated $60 million in January, $60 million in RIP funds in January by the Commission. Phase 3 will start construction this summer. For Phase 4, final design is underway for all 10 miles. And we are planning on constructing a subsegment of Phase 4, call it 4A, in fiscal year 18-19, using the approximately $16 million in STIP funding programmed to the project. That includes $2 million in RIP funding listed under our county shares. We also have $9 million listed under San Joaquin COGS county shares through a funding exchange that we did with them years ago. And then there's $5 million in IIP funds. So our intent is to use those funds in fiscal year 18-19 to construct subsegment 4A. This project also includes a shop-funded rehabilitation of the existing 4 lanes. So the existing 4 lanes of pavement and other operational improvements funded by the shop are integrated now with the design of Phase 4. And it's important that there be a simultaneous delivery of the SHOP project and the HOV project to reduce construction impacts in this corridor and to allow for a prorated cost sharing of construction costs such as construction management. By keeping these projects tied together, both programs are going to benefit from these cost reduction and the cost sharing. And we estimate that the STIP program could benefit $5 to $10 million by keeping these projects integrated and on schedule together. Our funds in the STIP are listed as pre-construction. This is a challenge for us. Our original plan was to design the remaining 10 miles to 35%. We were going to be done by December of this year. Then we were going to come to the Commission for a STIP amendment in January to program them to the first subsegment for construction in fiscal year 18-19. Our idea was to do all 10 miles to 35% design and be very strategic and try and figure out the measure funds that we're going to be investing in the project and the STIP funds, how we could be most impactful with those funds for the first subsegment. So we left our funds in the STIP in these pre-construction phases. Now that the Commission has adopted allocation priorities, it looks like these projects should just be deleted. But the intention always was to come back to the Commission in January with an amendment to put these funds into construction, the first subsegment 4A. And so that's a bit of the backstory. And we're very concerned now that these funds are viewed as pre-construction instead of construction for fiscal year 18-19. We will be submitting a revised PPR for that subsegment 4A next week, and we would like to sit down with the Commission staff and discuss that with them. The second project that we will have remaining in the STIP will improve access to the Santa Barbara Airport via regional arterial extensions in the city of Goleta. That's the Eckwell Fowler project. It's project 4611. That is in final design. Right away has been purchased. It's been 15 years in the making. And it's integrated environmentally with the replacement of a federally funded bridge project that has flood control benefits for the city of Goleta. And the Commission recently allocated ATP funds for components of that project. So deleting that project means walking away from federal bridge funds that are being leveraged and also a commitment of ATP funds that were just made to the project. Our third project that will be remaining in the STIP consists of a small landscaping project on Highway 246 for a passing lane that's currently under construction. That's project 6400Y. This is a mitigation for the passing lanes projects, again, that are under construction by Caltrans. It provides erosion control benefits, and I think that deleting this project, is going to result in erosion control issues for Caltrans and just push those costs over into the shop. Either way, they're going to end up being out there removing rocks or debris from the highway. But we would defer to Caltrans on that. We did not feel comfortable deleting it because it is a mitigation for the project and does have erosion control benefits, but we would defer to Caltrans on that, and we did not at this time recommend deleting that project. So that concludes my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions for you. Again, our highest priority project is our 101 HOV project. We greatly appreciate the partnership that we've had with the Commission. We've had great success on the first three phases. We would like to continue that and roll right into segment 4A if at all possible. And we hope that this is one of the few projects that will remain in the STIP at the end of this process. So thank you very much.
Questions for Mr. Vandenberg? All right. Thank you, Steve. We'll move on to Imperial County. Mark Baza.
Imperial County is proposing to increase overall programming by $540,000. They are proposing an increase to PPM and are exceeding their maximums for the 2016 and 2020 share periods. No delays or deletions are proposed.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners and staff. Happy St. Patrick's Day, and as always, every day, happy Freight Day. This isn't a freight. Anyhow, we have not taken the Commission's direction lightly on this matter. We are working with Caltrans as they're going through the design to explore any savings further as we complete our design on this project. We're also considering, if necessary, to consider scope elements that may need to be pulled out or delayed, if so to speak. I do want to highlight on the fact sheet that you have before you, there is an extension of Imperial Avenue that is a local project by the city of El Centro. And the overall project is probably about $8 million, but the city of El Centro has $5 million committed for the first half of that project, extending to the south. And that is the main purpose of this project, is to provide a connection to the south, which we had not had. And I'll talk a little bit more in my formal comments. As you already know, it is more difficult for less populated counties such as Imperial to construct highway improvements to the STIP, given relatively low funding levels compared to the high cost of construction. However, it becomes even more difficult when STIP funding significantly fluctuates from one STIP cycle to the next, resulting in delays that can span more than a decade, which this has occurred for us. A good example is this project, the only highway project in Imperial County that is currently programmed. The project was first programmed in the 2000 STIP, and over the next 4 STIP cycles, the design phase was delayed 8 years due to lack of funding. During the 2010 STIP cycle, the project was entirely dropped from the STIP due to lack of funding. The project was resurrected when design and right-of-way funds were added back into the STIP in 2012 and fully funded in the 2014 STIP. The design funds were finally obligated last year by Caltrans 15 years after the project was first programmed in the STIP. Therefore, Caltrans District 11 and ICTC are recommending together to move forward with this project. A summary of the project delays is provided in the handout. The project is adopted in SCAG's long-range RTP and the FTIP. Project is also consistent with the region-wide sustainable community strategy because it reduces VMT and greenhouse gas emissions by providing access over the freeway for both pedestrians and vehicles, as illustrated in the handout. The project will provide a new connection south of the freeway that currently does not exist. The only current option is to use the alternative crossings at the, as illustrated in the picture that you have, to the 86 I-8 interchange. So the interchange and traffic to the south provides a difficulty for traffic circulation in our region to the south there. The handout also summarizes the project benefits that stem from a reduction in vehicle miles traveled and the new design of the interchange. The benefits include travel time savings of $63 million over 20 years and over $4 million in emissions over the same period. The other ICTC recommendation is the 2 more years of PPM funding to the STIP at $300,000 per year. That does conclude my presentation, but I do want to emphasize that the Caltrans team, as it is, if we're allowed to proceed with the design as we're proposing, that we will be exploring all available savings and even elements that would be scope elements that could be delayed.
Thank you, Mark. Questions for Mr. Baza? All right. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
Next up is San Luis Obispo Council of Governments. I don't see Ron DeCarly here.
They will not be speaking.
Okay. Do we need to read any comments relative to there?
Yes, we could. San Luis Obispo is proposing to delete a total of $1.1 million. The Route 101, Route 46 interchange improvement project in Paso Robles. They have also proposed to delete the Route 101 Briscoe Road interchange improvements projects to 1920.
Thank you. Next up is Fresno Council of Governments. Tony is here. Oh, you moved. And Mr. Boren is taking Commissioner Semi's electronic device back to him in Fresno. So thank you very much.
Happy to do it.
Fresno is on page 13 of your red book. Fresno is proposing to delete a total of $10,164,000. They are proposing a decrease in construction for the Route 180 new freeway, Segment 3 project. They are proposing to add PPM programming but remain within the maximum for the share period. They have proposed no delays to the last 2 years.
Thank you. I'll be brief given the late hour this afternoon. Just a little bit of background on this project. State Route 180 is the only state highway in Fresno County that runs east to west. It provides connectivity from I-5 on the west all the way to the Sierra Mountains, Sierra National Forest on the east side, which Sequoia and King Canyon National Park are there. So the purpose of the project is to widen an existing 2-lane expressway to 4 lanes. Again, I can't overstate the importance of this corridor with regards to moving people and goods in the Fresno County area. We have followed CTC direction and had made a reduction to the project of $14 million, a little over $14 million. All told, it's a $102 million project. The STIP's in it for about 46%. We have about 53% in the measure and about 1% of the shop. I'll stop right there with regards to the project. And what I do want to emphasize, because Commissioner Simi said when I get up here to make sure I speak to what Fresno COG is doing to help address the situation. So I put together just a little list here, and I'll just go through it real quick. We have coordinated a 2016 San Joaquin Valley RTIP submittal in which over $30 million worth of projects were delayed for the first submittals of the RTIPs in December of 2015. We've reduced our COG STIP programming request by $14.75 million for the construction of State Route 180 East and replaced it with local funds. We've delayed State Route 180 West landscaping from 15-16 to 16-17, and then further delayed it to 17-18 per your request. We've sent letters to our legislators requesting that they work together to find a legislative fix to the transportation funding crisis. We've coordinated a San Joaquin Valley Legislative Day, and we've met with the San Joaquin Valley legislative representatives to discuss the transportation funding crisis and a need for a bipartisan solution. And then lastly, next week we will be holding a press conference with the local elected officials and labor and the business sector, as well as the League of Cities and CSAC, to expand awareness of the transportation funding crisis. So we're doing all that we can to try to raise awareness of the situation, and we followed CTC direction. We're good soldiers as far as that goes, and we look forward to working with you as we move forward. We know you have a very difficult challenge.
Thank you, Tony. Any questions for Mr. Boren? All right, thanks, Tony. Now we're going to go to Inyo County. The Inyo County Local Transportation Commission, and Courtney Smith is here representing the
you'll find
commission.
Yeah, thank you. You'll find the pages 18 and 19 in the Red Book. Inyo is proposing to delete a total of about $17.8 million. Again, consistent with the ITIP, they are proposing to close the projects that the ITIP is closing. They're deleting construction for the launch of Cortego. In coordination with Mono, they are proposing to add construction funding to the Freeman Gulch Segment 1 to fully fund construction to replace what's been taken off in the ITIP and Kern. And they are proposing a new project that matches federal lands access funds. They are not at this time proposing any delays to the last 2 years.
Good afternoon, Courtney Smith, Inyo County LTC staff. So the Inyo RTIP consists mainly of programming on state highway system on 3 MOU projects. When the ITIP draft recommendations were released, it looked like all of those MOU projects would be rescinded, and to keep at least one of the projects moving forward, the Inyo LTC, in partnership with Mono County LTC and in consultation with Caltrans District 9, proposed to program the construction component on Freeman Gulch Segment 1. The Inyo County LTC included in its RTIP additional programming for a new project, South Lake Road Reconstruction Project. South Lake Road programming will serve as a match for a Federal Lands Access Program competitive grant. The total match cost of $1.5 million will leverage almost $11 million in federal funding that is not part of the STIP. Inyo County would not be able to proceed with the project if it did not receive the matching funds through the STIP. The Inyo County LTC exceeds its deletion target by $12.4 million, and that doesn't include the ITIP funds that were cut. The ITIP reduction of $50.9 million on the 3 MOU projects is 26% of the total amount cut on the ITIP statewide. The 4-laning of US 395 and State Route 14 corridors in the Eastern Sierra is the top priority. Moving forward for the Inyo County LTC, a general goal is to leverage funding outside the STIP. Our commission also supports the programming in the ITIP of the Olancha-Cartago for the project components up until construction. Is the Inyo County LTC willing to risk putting forward STIP shares on Freeman Gulch 1 in place of ITIP funds and Kern RIP funds? The answer is yes. When and if more funding is available, we hope that our partnering agencies, Caltrans Programming, your commission, our MOU partners, and our partners at the district level will prioritize the funding for our important MOU gap closure corridor development projects. Thank you.
Any questions for Mr. Smith? Okay, with that, we have no other county agencies scheduled or regional agencies scheduled, so I would ask if there are any additional public comments. Very well. With that, thank you to all the presenters for keeping your remarks short and to the point. I think it was very helpful for the commissioners, and I do want to express my appreciation to the commission members who participated in today's hearing. It's important that they hear the comments, and particularly Commissioners Dunn and Inman for staying through the whole presentation. And with that, the hearing is closed, and before we depart, we want to thank both the Orange County Transportation Authority for their hosting the events in Orange County, helping with host that, but particularly for the Transportation Corridor agencies for providing this amazing space. This was absolutely perfect for our purposes, and we really appreciate Mike Cramen in the back there. Thank you, Mr. Cramen, for providing all of the and the nice things that a lot of people didn't see in terms of the refreshments and coffee and things in the back. Thank you. So we'll